Hi everyone and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be looking at removal of surface mount capacitors. As some of you may know, these can be quite troublesome to remove because the contact points that you're left to work with are very small. And if you overheat the pads, you can inadvertently remove them. And it's even worse if you've got some of these that leak, because it seems to put a coating over the solder pad itself, and the solder just doesn't want to take. So we're going to be looking at 3 different ways of doing this. 2 of the ways are quite barbaric, but I've never done this before. The reason I'm doing this bit of research, is because I've got a couple of Commodore Amigas that need recapping, a 600 and a 1200. They both have a number of surface mount capacitors, and I don't want to go in like a bull in a china shop and work on them straight away without practicing first. So I've got this scrap board here from a camcorder I recently did a teardown on, a Sharp camcorder, which has got quite a lot of capacitors on it. And I thought it would be an ideal candidate to do some learning on, some practicing. As you can see, I've already removed one there, and of course it was actually leaking underneath. So these methods I'm about to show you, I'm not recommending any of them, so if you do decide to try out any of these methods, you do so at your own risk. So with that said, we'll look at method number 3 first. I'll do them in order of what I think is probably the best, or safety wise. You've probably heard of the method, and it is to just twist them off, which, like I said, does sound quite barbaric. And of course you do have to assess the board to see just how bad things are before you do that, because if you have got a lot of corrosion there, like I said before, you could inadvertently pull off a trace or a track, and that would just ruin your day. You just don't want to do that. And sometimes as well, these have actually leaked through, if they are leaking, through to the other side. So if you can see the other side of the board, have a look first, because the capacitor residue can leak through the little tiny vias, those tiny little holes. And if you've got a multi-surface board where it's more than 2 layers, then you're going to come unstuck and be in a lot of trouble. Looking at just how bad things can be on a board, for example, this side, like I've said before, is quite clean looking. You can't really tell at all. If I turn it over, 2 capacitors on this side actually already dropped off when I opened this camcorder up. As you can see, they've really corroded the board. If I turn it over, the corrosion's actually passed through to the other side. It's gone through the vias. I bet that capacitor there is ready to fall off. But no, it's not. It's quite badly rusted though. Let's just, there you go. The electrolyte's actually dried up on that one. Strange how those have fared the worst. And you can see it's actually gone under the trace, under the masking rather. The corrosion has travelled under the masking. So you can probably scrape that away, look, there you go. So the electrolyte's gone under the masking and settled underneath, and the masking's just coming off. How bad that is. And that's why a lot of these old camcorders from the 90s are just not worth repairing. So we'll look at this one here first. Let's try it, see how it goes. So I'm just going to twist it. I'm not going to pull. I'm just going to twist it to weaken off the legs, and there we go. It's actually come off quite easily. And it's got a lot of gunk underneath of it, so it is leaking. If you can see that on camera, but yeah, you can. That has leaked quite badly, but it's to a point though. It looks like it's only just started, probably recently. When I say recently, probably a couple of years, because it hasn't corroded the pads. It's just leaking out a residue, and that came off very easily without any fuss. There's no damage there whatsoever. So the next thing to do will be to clean that area off and then remove the legs. I'm just going to use some IPA and a cotton wool bud. And that's cleaned up quite nicely. And as you can see, the legs are still attached, So the next thing to do will be to remove those. Usually I work with through the whole stuff. For any of you watching regularly, you just see me done that Commodore PET video or series of videos where I replaced quite a number of ICs, and I found out quite an easy way to remove those in the end, just by snipping off the legs. There we go, it's just come off nicely. There we are. That's that one. Obviously if it is bad as well, you can put some flux on there. It depends how corroded it is. It will help the solder take. Sometimes you can add a little bit of solder as well if you need to. But these aren't coming off too badly. I've got my soldering iron at 300 degrees. I think that'll be okay for something like this. Of course you don't want to put too much pressure down on the pad, because you can end up moving it. And there we go. They're off. Some people use the braid to soak up any additional solder, and you can put some flux on that as well to help it soak in even more. I think that would have worked better with a flat end tip on the soldering iron, because that has moved it about slightly, hasn't it? So this is my first go on this, so you don't want any solder flakes left on there, because it could potentially cause a short later on down the line. But no, that's come off quite well, that has. So that's that way of doing things then. Like I say, it's just goes to show just how much that's leaked. Quite badly. Wow. You couldn't see that at all from above. There was nothing showing up whatsoever. So that's that way of doing things, which I know some people wouldn't agree with. Now the next way, move that out of the way, is snips. You squeeze the can from the base basically just underneath, so you can try and lift it off. So let's try that next. Of course the temptation is to pull as well, but you don't want to do that. Ooh, well, that's a shot across the room. There we go. So that's actually taken the legs off as well on that attempt. Look how much that's leaked. You can see how shiny it is. Has it taken the legs off? Hard to tell. How green that is. Look. I don't think the legs are still on there. I think they came off with the capacitor. But let's have a look with the soldering iron. So I've got an old solder socket here, because I don't have a soldering station. Let's just remove some of that solder with that. Still intact, no damage. So that's method number 2. And method number 1 is just the old-fashioned way, that's to try and get to the actual pad itself on either side and unsolder it. So I'm going to put a little bit of flux on this one to try and help. I'll go for this one because it's quite difficult. It's buried in between some of the components. Tiny bit of solder. And then I'm just going to try and gently lift it back and I heat it up. This is where I always struggle with tiny stuff like this. And of course you risk heating it up too long as well. Well, the whole thing just came off. So I've probably put too much pressure on that. And looking at underneath of it, there's some leakage and both legs are still attached. So I'm quite surprised how easy they came off actually. So it's either because it's rotted from the residue for the capacitor, or it's just the brute force of me pulling it back too hard. So that was pretty bad really, wasn't it, of me to do it that way. You can just about make out that was that one there. The pads have grayed slightly on this one. So let's just get that bit of solder off. Put a bit of fresh on. And remove it. It's the only thing with a solder sucker, if you're not careful, sometimes the solder can come back out of it. There we are. Let's give that a bit of a clean again. In fact, let's go over them all. You can see how green that is from removing those 3. Let's see how much more comes off with the clean end. Yeah, still showing some dirt. Amazing how much is still coming off. I'm just going to have a go at one of these teeny tiny ones now, see how that comes off. So we'll repeat everything again. We'll start off with a twisting motion. Again, it's another one that's leaking. This camcorder had no chance of ever being fixed. I did regret at the time taking it to pieces the way I did, scrapping it, but I certainly don't now. One leg has come off and one hasn't. You see that one there still on. There we go. Let's just try cutting one off again. See if it's just as bad. Try this little one over here if I can get it on camera. That one there. And it just shot off again. and I think it's taking the legs with it. It really does depend just how badly corroded it is. I think if I saw a board that was worse than this, visibly worse, I don't think I would do it that way. Because like I said, you could actually take a pad off, and that would just be terrible. So there you have it. That's 3 different methods of removing those capacitors. I'm not sure which one I'm most happiest with actually. I think probably twisting it off. The one we're cutting it seems to make it shoot across the room. Let's just try another one quickly. They just must be so rotten. There we go, pulled that one. It's taking one of the legs out, one stay behind. Let's just add some fresh solder to that pen. Get the tweezers on it. Well, the pads look absolutely fine. So they've all worked really, haven't they? It's just, like I said, it just seems a little bit barbaric when you think about it. But my least successful way was to try and remove it the old-fashioned way. Let's just try one more. Bit of flux there. Right, that's one side lifted off. Didn't ping off this time. There we go. So that's come off in one piece. Try this one. I think the more you get into this, the more you practice, the better you get at it, don't you really? It's like anything. Bit more solder. You can just hear it make a little bit of a sound. Sorry, my thumb's in the way there. Yeah, that's come off intact. Let's go for another one. Let's go for that fat one. Certainly makes a difference with the flux. Just helps the solder flow better. That was not going to come off so easy. No. Yeah. But I think I'm still putting too much pressure on there as I lift it up. Let's try adding the solder to the pads. Of course, if they're corroded, it doesn't want to take. But these aren't bad, these are still look shiny. So I've lifted that one up, but now I'm going to struggle to get behind it, so I should have done it on the other side first really. There we go. Oh, let's stop back down again. Cools down that quickly. Oh, there you go. I mean, I'm getting better at it. I think this is probably the better method, really, isn't it? For safety. But you still risk, as I'm prying that up, I can still risk tearing up a trace. I should put less pressure on it. Let's just try one more. So that one there, wasn't it? Let's just add a bit of solder. Make sure you can see it on camera. That's not taken. Too much. Take that off. So let's just gently lift it up. There we go. So it'll come off in one piece. Get hold of it properly. There we go. Both legs are still attached. Oh, there you go. I think I prefer the last method. Like I said, it seems a lot safer. As long as you put some flux on those pads, add some fresh solder, they'll come off a lot easier, it seems. But obviously it does depend on the state of the board you're working on. Physically, to look at this one, you couldn't tell. Looking at those pads, you can't tell that anything's leaking. It's not until I've removed them I've seen the electrolyte leaking out underneath. But on the Commodore Amigas I've looked at, I can actually see the pads have gone grey from corrosion over the years. Because obviously those computers now are getting on a bit, and they're from the 1990s. Saying that though, there's camcorders from the 90s as well. They haven't greyed at all, have they? So I guess it really just does depend. Another telltale sign as well is a fishy odour coming from the leaking capacitors when the computer's been on for a while, or whatever the device is. As they warm up, it starts to release a foul smell. Well, there you have it. 3 different ways that I've shown you of how to remove these surface mount capacitors. I shall probably end up using all of these ways actually when I work on the Amigas, because some of the capacitors, at least on the Amiga 600, one of them is very close to the ribbon connector, and I don't think I'll be able to get the tip of my iron in there without melting the actual connector itself. So I shall probably use the twisting motion to get that one out. Because at least when I'm soldering it back in again, I'm only making one attempt to get my soldering iron down in that gap. Well, I hope you enjoyed watching that with me. Please feel free to comment, like reading the comments. Maybe someone else has another suggestion of ways to do this. The only way I didn't actually show, I realised just now, was using the hot air gun. You can get a small tipped hot air gun to heat up the components, and you can use this tape to shield for any heat from the components so you don't damage them. I have tried that method myself in the past without success. I ended up inadvertently heating up a board too much and blistering it. Thankfully I didn't do any permanent damage. Well, I guess that just leaves me to say, as always, thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll be seeing you. And if you did enjoy watching this video, you may want to take a look at some of my other videos on similar themes. I'm always buying something on eBay, some old piece of technology, and trying to repair it. And as always, don't forget to like, subscribe and share. Thanks for watching.